Serpents though your hair may be, plain to behold is your beauty. Verdant skin and eyes of coal, stealer of my body and soul. Sister, sister, heart of stone, whilst petrified I do atone. Sister, sister, gaze of death, yours until my final breath. To your altar I deign climb, but your end is my design. Send me reeling to nowhere, a message warning all who dare. Sister, sister, heart of stone, whilst petrified I do atone. Sister, sister, gaze of death, yours until my final breath. I hear it now, your hissing call, into your clutches we all fall. I will do my duty true, to murder any who attack you. Sister, sister, heart of stone, whilst petrified I do atone. Sister, sister, gaze of death, yours until my final breath. Golgari, green and black as tar, it is yours who we all are. Serpent slither striking true, now I live only for you. Sister, sister, no escape, now I know this is my fate. Sister, sister, gaze of death, yours until my final breath. Well, I hope you enjoyed that poem. It was actually very fun to make. Now that the sisters have caught you as they've caught me, I'd like to welcome you to the Uncommon Commander, a magical channel for Magic the Gathering. Now that you're here, there is no escape. Today's commander is clearly going to be the monstrously hard to cast Sisters of Stone Death. Yes, Sisters of Stone Death is a legendary creature Gorgon that has a 7/5 body and a casting cost of 8 mana, 4 of which can be generic, 2 of which must be black, and another 2 of which must be green. She also has 3 abilities, the first of which says, pay 1 green mana. Target creature blocks Sisters of Stone Death this turn if able. The second ability says pay a black and a green mana. Remove from the game target creature blocking or blocked by Sisters of Stone Death. The third says pay 2 and a black. Put a creature card removed from the game with Sisters of Stone Death into play under your control. So she does a lure effect, an exile effect, and a theft effect. To do all 3 to the same creature at the same time will require you to spend 6 mana. And that's just for the abilities. She still costs another 8 to cast. So obviously our game plan is to ramp like Yavimaya, because this girl is expensive. Luckily, while our mana costs are expensive, our deck is anything but, coming in at $99.54, not including basic lands, on the day it was created, if you're buying it from TCG Player. And if you are, please consider buying through my TCG Player link in the video description. I also have a small Patreon if you'd like to support the creation of the videos that way instead, and the link can be found below. Finally, clicking the like and subscribe button is both free and super helpful to my channel. Thanks! I'm going to do today's deck tech in a little bit different of an order than I usually do, because it occurs to me that lands are the thing you put on the battlefield first, so why don't I present them first? I can't think of a good reason not to, so here you go. We're running the color-fixing Necroblossom Snarl, Woodland Cemetery, Blighted Woodland, and Myriad Landscape. We're also running utility lands, Arcane Lighthouse, Bojuka Bog, Scavenger Grounds, Buried Rune, Memorial to Folly, Ghost Quarter, and Tectonic Edge. We're also running the basic lands, 14 forests, and 9 swamps. Now, let's supplement those lands. I know that I always say we're going to ramp hard, but this time I absolutely mean it. This is probably the most ramp that I've ever put into a deck that wasn't Multani. We're going to start with 18 ramp spells in this first section, and then we're going to move on to other sections that also have incidental ramp in them. So our primary ramp spells are the creatures Forsworn Paladin, Elysian Caryatid, I can never get that right, Farhaven Elf, Leyline Prowler, Rootweaver Druid, and Spring Bloom Druid. I notably did not put Sakura Tribe Elder in here, and that's because I wanted creatures that could sit around as blockers for a while once they've ramped us. If you wanted to put the Elder in, I'd probably take Farhaven Elf or Rootweaver Druid out. The other permanents, Font of Fertility, Arcane Signet, Felwar Stone, Bonder's Ornament, and Skyclave Relic also ramp us. The sorceries that we have for ramp are Rampant Growth, Cultivate, Grow from the Ashes, Journey of Discovery, Kodama's Reach, Vastwood Surge, and Nissa's Renewal. So yeah, that's 18 ramp spells. It's a lot, but we don't want to wait till turn 8 or 9 to cast our commander. After all that ramp, you might think that this is a big mana deck, but actually our average mana cost is just 3.27. Really, we have a lot of low mana value cards, followed by absolute bombs like our commander. This means that the mid-game we're going to have a lot of excess mana. Because of that, I've included some mana sinks, as seen here. Gemstone Array will actually store your excess mana so you can have a big turn later with Sisters of Stone Death. Golgari Guildmage will make Sisters, or another creature of yours, really big. Or, really bigger. Heck, it can make itself really big. It also does some recursion for us. And finally, we have the token generators, Wormcalling, Jade Mage, and Ant Queen. These can all come down early to mid-game, and then build a small army for you in the mid-game. This can be nice, because as you'll see later, we've got a few Planeswalkers in this deck that need some defending. They also provide nice fuel for the Guildmage. The period before you get Sisters on the board is a good time to deal with any problems for your game plan. To remove these problems, we have these cards. For creature removal, we have Slaughter Pact, Infernal Grasp, Death Sprout, and Sever the Bloodline, which I like due to its ability to remove swaths of indestructible token creatures. Twice. Also, Infernal Grasp isn't released yet, but will be next month. Don't pre-order it, just wait. Pre-order prices are a scam. To remove artifacts and enchantments, we have Broken Bond, Return to Nature, Fade into Antiquity, and Maelstrom Pulse, which again can also remove swaths of tokens. Finally, we also have Varika, God of Affliction. She's a snake lady who acts as graveyard hate. She can also target your own creature cards in your own graveyard, if you need a Death Touch blocker just immediately. Now we're getting ready to cast our commander, but she's a huge mana investment, so people will try to remove her. We're not going to let that happen though. We're running these protection cards for her: Professor's Warning, Aspect of Mongoose, Fortitude, Golgari Charm, Heroic Intervention, and Wrap in Vigor. It's important not to have Sisters of Stone Death leave the battlefield once you've started exiling things with her, because when she re-enters, she will do it by game rules as a different permanent, and the cards you previously exiled with her won't be tied to her in any way. That means you won't be able to bring those creatures back to life under your control if she gets killed or flickered. Because of that, you can see that we're running mostly regeneration and indestructibility effects. And since I mentioned protection, I also want to mention these next two cards. Bonds of Mortality actually strips protection from your opponent's creatures, and Archetype of Endurance both provides protection for your creatures via hexproof, and removes hexproof from your opponent's creatures. Gotta be able to target their creatures if you want to steal them. A couple of other cards that have nothing to do with protection, but that I'm going to mention here anyway, are Echo Circlet and Gift of the Deity. Echo Circlet makes Sisters a terrifying blocker, especially when you've got 4 mana open. And Gift of the Deity makes her an absolutely horrifying attacker as long as you have mana open. Now we're approaching the late game, so this is a good time to refill your hand, and maybe get a couple of things back from your graveyard. This will make sure you don't run out of gas late game. Our card draw spells are Arguel's Bloodfast, Greed, Siphon Mind, Garrick's Primal Hunter, Moonlight Bargain, Necrologia, Return of the Wildspeaker, Shamanic Revelation, Asmodeus the Archfiend, and Baleful Force. Both Moonlight Bargain and Asmodeus are nice to have when opponents are playing cards that hate on card draw, since they don't technically draw cards. Baleful Force looks like it's a bit much, but that 8 mana cost isn't too bad in this deck with how hard it ramps, and if you can keep it alive until your next turn, you'll have drawn 4 cards with it, and that'll have been worth the price. If it lives any longer than that, it becomes a great deal. And now we've come to the moment that I've been waiting for, the moment you've been waiting for, the moment I've been waiting you to wait for. This is the moment where we win the game. A lot of cards have Death Touch, but I've always found that ability to be a bit disingenuous, or at the least overstated. The cards I'm presenting now have real Death Touch. These are Vorpal Sword, Vraska Golgari Queen, Vraska the Unseen, Vraska Scheming Gorgon, and Phage the Untouchable. This is when you realize this isn't a deck made to cheat things out of the battlefield. This isn't a deck that cares to overfill its graveyard, and it doesn't really care about its opponent's graveyards either. What it wants is to caress the battlefield like a lover, slip nimbly along its curves, slither silky and smooth with seductive control. And when all defenses are down, strike like a viper for the throat. You lose, jerk. here's your cards back. Well, sisters and brothers, you've made it to my favorite part of my videos. Or maybe my second favorite part. I do enjoy creating those super pretentious intros. Nonetheless, this section is the final countdown! In today's final countdown, we're going to be looking at some underrated cards for this deck, and many of them are underrated, period. Our number 5 card pulls triple duty, with all 3 effects being board wide, all while costing just 1 mana to cast, and that combination is what gets it on this list. This card is Glaring Spotlight, and for a single mana, you can begin targeting creatures that have hexproof, forcing them to block Sisters of Stone Death. For 3 more generic mana, creatures you control gain hexproof and become unblockable for the turn. So it's a hexproof stripper, a hexproof giver, and an evasion spell, all wrapped up in one efficiently costed card. That's good enough for number 5. Good enough for number 4 is a card I don't think I've ever seen in the wild, but I've definitely put it into my own decks. Ashes to Ashes is its name, and exiling 2 creatures for 3 mana and 5 life is its game. Unless you're already almost dead, or need it to be at instant speed, it's extremely powerful for its cost and is one of the most underused removal cards in EDH. If you prefer instant speed and don't need the exile removal, consider its cousin, Reckless Spite, instead. I personally prefer the exiling effect because I hate Avacyn. Number 3 brings us a mana sink that I left out earlier. Or is it a ramp spell? This one fits in a lot more green decks than it's currently in, and it definitely belongs in decks that care about colored mana. Its name is Mana Bloom, and casting it costs X and a green. It enters the battlefield with X charge counters on it, and removing a charge counter gives you mana of any color. You may only remove 1 counter per turn, but that means that you can use it up to 4 times before your next turn, and it's very helpful in storing up mana on a turn when you don't need it. That gives you the opportunity to pump it into Sisters of Stone Death later. It can also be used to activate abilities of creatures that you've stolen that you don't otherwise have the colors for, and when it's used up, well then it goes back to your hand so that you can use it again. Now we move on up our chart to number 2. You may think this card isn't underrated as it's in 55% of the Sisters of Stone Death decks on EDH Rec, but I believe that it is underrated because it should be in 100% of them, and that's a difference of 45%. This card is Infiltration Lens, and equipped to Sisters, it's a bursty card draw engine. Simply attack with Sisters, activate her first ability 3 times, and draw 6 cards, filling your hand back up. This is a great way to punish token armies, as those give you no shortage of targets. But finally, we reach number 1. I can't argue that this is better than Infiltration Lens, but I can argue that it's a little bit more fun. Oh, and also, this is kind of our secret commander. I mean, yeah, the deck isn't built entirely around it, but it is built partially around it. This card, this legendary card, is the coolest equipment in the game. Its name is Elbrus the Binding Blade. This handy dagger does cost 7 mana to initially cast, but only 1 to equip. It grants the wearer +1/+0 and the ability, when equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, unattach Elbrus the Binding Blade, and then transform it. It transforms into the legendary demon Withengar Unbound, a 13/13 flying intimidate trample creature with whenever a player loses the game, put 13 +1/+1 counters on Withengar Unbound. So we're going to equip this to Phage the Untouchable, or one of those tokens Vraska makes, and when they deal combat damage, we'll get 2 ability triggers that go on the stack. The first trigger we'll want to put on the stack is Phage's. We'll then put Elbrus's trigger on the stack after Phage's, which causes Elbrus to resolve first. That'll transform it into Withengar. Then Phage will kill your opponent. That'll make Withengar get those counters, making him a 26/26, an absolutely absurd creature, with tons of evasion. He's going to be targeted by your remaining opponents, but if you can keep him alive, he's a remarkably fun way to end the game. Congratulations, you just alternate wing conditioned your opponents to death. Go you! Well, that's all for today's deck tech. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, and if you have any cool ideas for cards to toss into Sisters of Stone Death, I'd love to hear them, so leave a comment. I don't really have anything more to say right now, so instead I'll just ramble on for a moment while the end screen is up. This only needs to last 20 seconds. Now, do you think it's been 20 seconds? I think it probably has, so, bye!